Before China became one of the world's great unified civilizations, it spent centuries fighting basically everyone on its borders. Nomads to the north, kingdoms in Korea, empires to the west. And these weren't random skirmishes, they were turning points that shaped East Asia for over 1,000 years. So let's go in order. When the Han Dynasty was founded, China's biggest threat wasn't another empire. It was the Xiongnu, a massive confederation of nomadic horse warriors in the north. At first, the Han tried brute force. Big mistake. The first emperor, Liu Bang, marched north himself and got surrounded at Baideng in 200 BC. An emperor of China trapped in the snow by horse archers. That moment changed everything. For decades after, the Han did something humiliating. They paid the Xiongnu off. Silk, food, even royal marriages. Basically, please don't raid us. But then came Emperor Wu, and he flipped the whole strategy. Instead of defense, he chose total offense. And his generals, especially the young Huo Kubing, turned mobility into a weapon. At the Battle of Mobei in 119 BC, Han armies pushed deep into the desert and shattered Xiongnu power. Not a clean knockout, but enough to break their dominance for good. And just like that, China stopped reacting to the steppe and started shaping it. Fast forward a few centuries. China is unified again, this time under the Sui dynasty. And the emperor decides Korea should be part of the picture too, specifically the kingdom of Goguryeo. So the Sui launched enormous invasions, armies in the hundreds of thousands marching into harsh terrain. But Goguryeo was fortified, prepared, and happy to fight defensively. Then came disaster. At the Battle of Salsu, the Goguryeo general Ilji Mundok lured a retreating Sui army into a river crossing and sprang the trap. The result was almost total annihilation. The Sui never recovered. A few years later, the dynasty collapsed completely. One of the most expensive wars in Chinese history ended with the dynasty simply disappearing. The next dynasty, the Tang, tried again, stronger and far more confident. Emperor Taizong led the campaign against Goguryeo in person. At the Battle of Ansi fortress, Tang forces dug in for what they expected to be a quick victory. Instead, they got stuck. Weeks turned into months. Months turned into failure. The fortress held. Eventually, the Tang had to retreat. It became one of those rare moments in history where a Chinese emperor, leading in person, simply could not break a well-defended border state. Goguryeo survived for decades after that. Now we move west. The Tang were expanding into Central Asia, and so was the Abbasid Caliphate. The two eventually collided at the Battle of Talas. This wasn't just China versus another army. It was East Asia meeting the Islamic world. The battle itself wasn't huge by later standards, but the consequences were. The Tang general Gao Xianzi was defeated, partly when his Karluk allies switched sides, and Tang influence in Central Asia faded. Soon, internal rebellions pulled them back home for good. One popular story says papermaking spread west after this encounter, though historians still debate the details. Either way, it marked a boundary. China would not dominate Central Asia forever. Now we jump forward again. The Song dynasty was wealthy, advanced, and stable, but militarily not dominant. To the north rose the Jurchens, who formed the Jin dynasty. At first the Song thought, we can manage this. They could not. In 1127, disaster struck. The Jin captured the Song capital, Kaifeng. And here's the wild part. They captured the emperor and the retired emperor, both hauled north as prisoners. This is the Jingkang incident. It ended the northern Song completely. The surviving court fled south and became the Southern Song, a literal split in Chinese history caused by a single invasion. But the Song didn't fully give up. Enter Yue Fei, one of the most legendary generals in Chinese history. He led counterattacks against the Jin and won battle after battle. But politics got in the way. He was recalled, arrested, and executed before he could finish his campaigns. His story became legendary, the loyal general who could have changed everything and never got the chance. One of the most important turning points came a bit later. At the Battle of Caishi, the Southern Song, led by a civil official named Yu Yunwen, used river fleets, paddle-wheel ships, and early gunpowder weapons to stop a massive Jin invasion across the Yangtze. It wasn't a total victory, but it proved something important. Even if the Song couldn't dominate on land, they could survive through innovation and naval power. Zoom out, and a pattern appears. The Han struggle with the Xiongnu, then adapt and expand. The Sui collapse after overreaching into Korea. The Tang hit their limits in Korea and Central Asia. The Song lose the north to the Jurchens, but survive in the south. China doesn't just win or lose battles, it evolves after each one. Sometimes it expands, sometimes it contracts, but it never stops rebuilding. These weren't just wars on a map. They were long-term stress tests for one of the world's oldest civilizations. And every time China met a new external power, the result wasn't just a battle. It was a new version of China itself.